You want to know the last time an American president asked Congress for approval to go to war? FDR, World War II. The last 70 years, America has been sending men and women to die without congressional approval. This article was sent in by Patreon supporter Alex Talk. Alex Talk, thank you so much. This is a fantastic article. The article was in thenation.com. It came out November 6th. It's by Danny Sjursen. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that last name. But this is what's been in this article, and man, it's worth a solid read. It goes into how this has happened. So it started with the Korean War in 1950. It was basically called a police action. 35,000 troops died. Vietnam. Lyndon Johnson passed the Gulf of Tonkin Act. Now there's a lot of people saying, did the attack of the Gulf of Tonkin actually happen? It seems like maybe more of a false flag. But even if it was an actual event, it was the Gulf of Tonkin that was just passed. And it allowed us to commit, and 58,000 people died, right? And in September of 1970, future presidential candidate Bob Dole said this on the Senate floor, right? When Nixon had expanded the Vietnam War, does this sound familiar? Nixon took what his predecessor, Lyndon Baines Johnson, did and expanded it. And here's what Bob Dole said, September 1st of 1970. Every senator here is partially responsible for sending 50,000 young Americans to an early grave. This chamber reeks of blood. It does not take any courage at all for a congressman or senator or a president to wrap himself in the flag and say we are staying in Vietnam because it is not our blood that is being shed. It had been about 6 years since Congress, that was the end of his quote, but it had been 6 years since Congress all but rubber-stamped President Lyndon Johnson's notoriously vague Tonkin Gulf Resolution, which provided what legal framework there was for military escalation in Vietnam. That's what they did, and that's what this country's been doing. I mean, and by June of 1970, 50,000 troops had already died. The total number is about 58,000 troops. If you're ever in D.C., go to the Vietnam Vets Memorial. Oh man, does it really personalize war. The first time I went there, I broke down in tears. This is 20 years ago, because you're just seeing all these names. You're basically, to me, it was like seeing a bunch of bodies stacked onto each other. And these are names, and there's people. And there's people there crying and putting things by. Like each one of those names is a person. They have a story. They had a family. They had a whatever. It personalizes it, because 58,000, that's still like a statistics. When you see the names all on top of each other, it makes it very personable, right? So the Korean War, and then the Vietnam War Powers Act, even the War of Iraqi Freedom. But here's another one. In 1983, for example, President Ronald Reagan announced that he planned to send a contingent of troops to Lebanon, but claimed the agreement with the host nation ruled out any combat responsibilities. 241 Marines died. So, hey, Marines who died there, not a combat thing. When combat did in fact break out in Beirut, congressional leaders compromised with Reagan and agreed to an 18-month authorization. 1999 in Kosovo, President Bill Clinton. A few legislators sued Bill Clinton in federal court, charging that he had violated the War Powers Act by keeping combat soldiers in the field past 60 days. Clinton simply yawned and pronounced that the act itself constitutionally defective. The federal district court in Washington agreed and quickly ruled in the president's favor. Right? George H.W. Bush, the Gulf War in 1991, right? A bipartisan array of congressional leaders insisted that President George H.W. Bush present an authorization of the use of military force, the AUMF. We've talked about this a lot. That was put in place after 9/11, well before invading Kuwait or Saddam Hussein's Iraq. For several months, across 2 congressional sessions, the House and Senate held dozens of hearings, engaged in prolonged floor debate, and eventually passed that AUMF by a historically narrow margin. And then 9/11. Which puts us in where we're at today. Endless war. And Democratic war hawks are such a part of the problem. We know the Republicans are big war hawks, but even then, Rand Paul spoke up. He was trying to just say, he just tried to propose that one little thing and voted down. This idea that the Democrats don't want to go to war is preposterous. It's like what Obama did. But Obama's drone strikes had rainbow flags on them, so it was a lot better for all those civilians that were killed. And they went, oh, wow, look at how diverse these drone strikes are. America's so much better when it kills my family. And now I'm joining a terrorist organization because I'm furious. Alex Talk, thank you for submitting this, because why this pisses me off is it shows you, if you're wondering about, oh, there's 2 parties and which party's better, I just shown you Republican and Democratic presidents have been circumventing this since the 50s. Since the 50s. And this is why we're in a perpetual state of war. And each president then just exercises more power. This is the deep state. This is the corporate state that we've been talking about. This is the military-industrial complex has been pushing this. That's why we've gone from this. That's why we're in war in 8. Now we just invaded Niger and Somalia and wherever else. So I'll read this to you. Unless something drastically changes, the sudden growth, for example, of a grassroots anti-war movement or a major Supreme Court decision, and the author puts fat chance, limited presidential power, Americans are likely to be living with internal war for the distant future. We need anti-war. That's why when I hear this, oh, stop with the purity tests. 70 years of not getting congressional approval. Why do we have a constitution? And shit, if Trump could get rid of it, he would. I mean, and look what happens. Look at all the civilians Obama killed. He got a Nobel Peace Prize. George Bush, who lied about the war in Iraq, sent thousands of Americans and hundreds of thousands, if not more, Iraqis to their death for oil bullshit reasons, is now being revered by the left. Neoliberals are like, boy, I even miss George Bush because Trump's so bad. Really? How about fuck all of them? I don't miss Obama. I don't miss Bush. I don't miss Bill Clinton, who fucking sexually assaulted and raped women. How come he isn't being strung up? And who was the attorney that defended Bill Clinton in the 80s? Oh, his wife, Hillary, right. Ugh, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of this corporate bullshit. This is why we have 22 veterans committing suicide a day. A day is because 70 years of endless bullshit corporate wars. 70 years. 70. So Alex Talk, thank you for submitting this article. You get to do this at the $5 level if you want to be a Patreon supporter. Go to patreon.com and don't back down from your progressive stance. Don't make concessions. Don't let anybody tell you you're crazy and we got to move more to the center, more to the right. We've been moving so far to the right, the left is behind us, man. We're not, like, it's gone. Every time the Democrats move to the center and move to the right, guess what? Where does the Republicans go? Further right. And that's what we're watching. That's why there's a Nazi psychopath in the White House who doesn't care about working class Americans, doesn't care about anything but his own personal interest. He's a narcissistic, greedy asshole. Power hungry, just like the Clintons, just like the Obamas, just like the Bushes, just like Reagan, like all these assholes. So, and vote with your dollars, you guys. Vote against oil, because that's a big reason for a lot of this. Vote against it. Don't use it. You know? Buy a car that runs on vegetable oil. You know? So do whatever you got to do. I know I'm sort of ranting at this point, but I'm so mad at this. We just had Veterans Day. That's how I'm going to support vets. I'm only going to vote for progressives that are anti-war candidates, like Nina Turner and Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard, an Iraq war vet, who said, I don't want to go and do more regime change in reference to Assad in Syria because I have friends that never came back from Iraq, right? I was on planes I was on 2 different planes, one coming back from Afghanistan and one coming back from Iraq when I was over there doing comedy shows that had coffins in them. The Iraq one, it was a military, so it was an American flag draped coffin. I don't want anyone to have to do that. We shouldn't be sending those coffins home to anybody. And then sending people home with prosthetic limbs and all this other stuff. You want to take care of vets? You want to support the troops instead of putting a bumper sticker on your gas-guzzling SUV? How about support anti-war movements? How about that? You don't want your son and daughter to go overseas and die? You don't want them to come home with physical and mental scars that they'll never get rid of? You don't want them to commit suicide because of the horrors of combat and the PTSD that is then misprescribed and mistreated back here? You don't want that to happen? Don't support politicians that are all war, 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 war. They voted for it? Graham, how did you vote for Hillary? Do you hate women? No, I hate war people. She voted for the war in Iraq. She voted for the Patriot Act. As the Secretary of State, she helped take this country from 2 wars to 7 under Obama. She's not anti-war. So thanks for watching this video. And wake up. We need an anti-war movement. You don't like hypermasculinity in this country? You don't like the patriarchy? You hashtag #MeToo? It's great we're talking about that. One of, not exclusively, but one of the things that creates this hypermasculine environment is being in a country that is in a constant state of war. It would be better for our economy. It would be better for us spiritually and emotionally. The soul of America is dead. It's sick. It's awful. We just kill and rape and maim and torture just so we can have this comfortable, cushy first world life. You want that to get better? You want to raise sensitive young men? Don't send them to war. Don't teach people how to kill. And equality, now equality looks like, oh, we want women to go to war. We want women to fight in combat roles. And while women should have access and opportunity and the same opportunities as men, is this what we want equality to look like? Oh, we're going to send a bunch of women now to a bunch of bullshit corporate wars. So now more women can come back with PTSD. That's what? This is insane. No more war. I'm sick of it. Getting us off of this war, getting us off of oil will cure a lot of America's ailments. We'll start to address things. We want to talk about mental illness? Let's talk about the mental illness, the sickness, the disease of wanting war. It's a sickness. Okay? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. Really? We're going to just go into this poor country and just keep thinking this is going to make us safer? And it's not. It's not. You want to feel safer as Americans? You don't want to be a part of a terrorist attack? Let's stop blowing up poor people in Middle Eastern Islamic countries that create more terrorists. Do you want that? See how it's all connected? I connect everything. Everything is connected. So start with no war. Start there. You want to pick a cause? Pick no war. Pick the environment. Tie them in together. We stop supporting Middle Eastern wars to get oil because our oil, as George Carlin said, we're an oil company with an army. We stop doing that. We support green technology. We give more jobs in America. And then we're not in these bullshit wars. So we don't have, we're not spending all this hundreds of trillions, we're not spending hundreds of billions or trillions of dollars, which could support our infrastructure. We could have things in place. We could have better jobs. We would have a less violent culture. Male and female, because there are women that are violent too. Do you want all these things? Start with anti-war. Start there. Thanks for watching.